So again, this is ClearTales, a podcast of narrated short stories for listeners with mild to moderate dementia.
Chapter 5, April in Paris. April didn't arrive so much as it lunged at the Parisians. What seemed like an endless gray of winter, its citizens battling the cold daily, now found them sunbathing on the Seine. Flowers, wine, and love were flowing again. This was not lost on Vincent either. Winter's stale catechism, clean, simple, precise, was left far behind and replaced with fresh air and fresh ideas promoted by the new non-traditionalists. Everywhere he looked, art was new, different, and diverse. And the view of Montmartre from the limestone quarries below was the perfect place to start. He stood at his easel, gazing up at the hill and vineyards that ended with village houses and the scattering of windmills along its ridge, their red, angular bases supporting the slow spinning wheels of white sails. It was almost hypnotic. He loaded his brush thicker with pigment and focused on the lime-white quarry walls before him. Scrub grass in the foreground, wind-scored and bright with sun. Rich greens and dramatic clouds. He could taste the chalk of this place as he stroked cadmium over the ghost-white stone when a voice said, "Hello, Vincent." He looked up. There was no one. The perch in this field was empty, save for his easel, sack, tin of brushes, and lump of bread. No one before him and no one after. He went back to the canvas and struck it with his number 4 brush. "That's far too much red," the voice said. "Too much." Vincent whirled around. The easel jumped and half fell, his canvas seesawing until he could steady it. "Who are you? What games are these?" "Maybe you're looking at a different hill than I am," the voice said, as if smiling. "Anyway, it doesn't matter. Reds are for July and August, not the spring." Vincent froze. His ribs tightened. Other than this voice, there was no sound but a distant dog and the wind plucking at clumps of grass. "Oh, look all you want. But you can't see me, brother. You can hear me, yes, but not see me with your eyes." He swallowed. "Brother? Theo?" No, it couldn't be him. Theo had a practical voice, a business voice, all contracts, balance sheets, and income ledgers. This was not his voice. "You said brother, but you're not Theo." "True on both," the voice said back. "I'm Vincent Van Gogh." At this, Vincent lost his motor skills as the brush touched down of its own will, smearing the delicate flowers below him. He gasped, his eyes darting to the ruined flowers on his canvas. "I am Vincent Van Gogh." "Indeed you are," the voice replied with a lilt of amusement. "And so am I, the first Vincent Van Gogh, born exactly 1 year before you." Vincent's jaw slackened as he tilted his face skyward, searching empty air for the source of these impossible words. His paintbrush dangled, forgotten between his fingers, dripping crimson onto the grass. "Perhaps you should call me Ian," the voice suggested into the stunned silence, "to avoid confusion." "Ian," Vincent whispered, the strange syllable foreign yet familiar on his tongue. "You're claiming to be my dead infant brother." "Precisely. Now we understand each other," Ian said brightly. "And as your brother, I must insist. Enough with that garish red. It's absolutely maddening." Vincent glanced at the smear of red carmine under the quarry ledge. He reconsidered. The rich, warm undertone gave the white quarry a pulse, a heartbeat. "No," Vincent said. "Why not?" "Because the white needs the warmth." "Then give it some yellow. That's warmish." "Watch," Vincent said, as his brush of red refined the bold strokes to reveal the stone's true tone. Better, Ian allowed. Though that blue... Don't, Vincent said sternly, cutting off the voice. That blue is as dead as heaven on a Saturday night. If you'll keep it up, Ian, I'll erase it all, Vincent said, his brush hovering above the canvas, tempting the voice in his head, calling its bluff. By 8 o'clock that evening, the lamps glowed inside 37 Rue Caulaincourt, turning Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec's apartment into a warm, perfumed engine of chaos. The marble-floored vestibule, fresco above glowing like a tiny painted sky, funneled guests toward the salon where lace curtains breathed in the night air and the tang of turpentine mingled with tobacco and cognac. Lautrec adored that smell, his trinity. Pissarro was the first to comment. Henri, your home smells like a painter murdered a distillery. My dear Pissarro, Lautrec replied, bowing with theatrical grace. I assure you nothing so vulgar. It is simply culture evaporating. He slipped a hand around the waist of Colette, one of 3 night maidens from Pigalle, who squealed as he gave a quick, unapologetic fondle. Tonight, we dine like kings, lunatics, or revolutionaries, à votre choix. The dining room was an opulent corridor of light. Chandeliers trembling with candle flame, tapestries glowing with scenes from Occitanie, and plates arranged as though the table were a stage. Red wine flowed like the Seine. The guests took their places, Gauguin complaining he'd been seated too far from the wine, Van Gogh murmuring about the excellent northern light from the adjacent studio, Seurat inspecting the frescoes, as though plotting their reorganization into perfect dots. The poets Jules Laforgue and Stéphane Mallarmé lounged with feline indifference, ready to pounce on any phrase ripe for mockery. The maidens, Madeleine, Colette, Sophie, drifted among them, laughing with the easy confidence of women who spent nights among drunken men and knew how to survive. Here's what's for this evening's meal, my merry makers, Lautrec said. The first course, warm oyster stew with undefined field greens. Second, duck à la Toulouse, richly sauced and theatrically stuffed with goose liver. Third, roasted quail with truffle, presented like contraband. Dessert, a pear tart soaked in brandy, the crust so buttery, Gauguin declared he might leave his wife again, just for another slice. This comes from my cookbook, Henri announced, chest swelling. You knew I had a cookbook, did you not, my dear Laforgue? I had heard rumors, Laforgue replied, but assumed it was merely a list of meals served at the brothels you frequent. The poets kept up a volley of sly remarks. Laforgue asking who in Montmartre had died recently. Mallarmé countering that in Paris, death was simply a more elaborate form of gossip. More wine was passed from glass to glass. With time, the pouring became increasingly sloppy. After dessert, the group drifted into the salon where cognac appeared and smoking pipes were lit. Conversations loosened. Lautrec prowled the room like a mischievous conductor, introducing parlor games that began with feigned innocence and, under his baton, slid rapidly toward the carnal. He whispered challenges into willing ears, orchestrated dares with a flick of his cane, and positioned each guest beside the maiden whose curves might best fuel the winner. Before long, Mallarmé and Laforgue were circling Sophie, eyeing each other like rival tomcats, each determined to claim the auburn-haired muse for his design. A jab of envy, a drunken boast. No one remembered which came first. And suddenly, Mallarmé swung wildly at Laforgue, missing by a mile. He toppled forward, crashing into the center table, sending glassware across the marble like a crystal constellation. Mallarmé, undeterred, launched himself at Laforgue again, and the two poets collapsed into a writhing heap on the floor. The spectacle was too much for the others to resist. One by one, the guests dove into the fray, and within moments the salon floor resembled the final seconds of a rugby match. Bodies stacked in a half-drunken pile while Lautrec applauded like a delighted ringmaster. By midnight, the apartment was a delightful wreck, worthy of a Led Zeppelin tour. Overturned cushions, lipstick-smudged glassware, empty bottles, a bit of blood, and endless arguments about color, poetry, and kissing. A final round of toasts was touted by the decadent group, and one by one the guests stumbled out into Montmartre, toward brothels, dance halls, or simply the cool Parisian night. Henri stood triumphant, smiling beneath his frescoed ceiling, a small emperor of appetites. The following morning, Vincent took his easel into the streets and discovered a whole world of life to paint. Butchers' carts in Pigalle crowded with pink shoulders and white fat. Factory chimneys across the city coughing out smoke. Children on the quayside skipping stones. Busy cafes spilling onto the sidewalks. The bounty of vegetable gardens in Montmartre. Windmills, people. Buildings leaning like crooked teeth. His technique was not so much evolving as it was trying on different skins of the artists around him. From Monet, light, unbuttoned, and dreamy, shrugging off shadows, to Seurat, the precise pinpoint of color and light that didn't blend so much as work independently together. From Émile Bernard, whose countryside portraits were bold, sentimental, and unapologetic, to Camille Pissarro's landscapes, so steeped in color you could almost drown. Such great talent, such great teachers. He painted quickly, as if there were simply not enough time to digest it all. Fresh art was everywhere, and in all manner of forms. When he walked the boulevards, sometimes the city gave back music in the way a tree extends an apple for your tasting pleasure. The large windows of affluent salons on the Avenue des Champs-Élysées gaped open, spilling out performances of the new sounds of musical impressionism, the sonic poems of Claude Debussy, the intellectual brilliance of Maurice Ravel, Erik Satie's odd compositions that turned from witty to melancholy and back again, Gabriel Fauré, Albert Roussel. There was so much, and it was happening everywhere you turned, in fashion, architecture, poetry, novels, an endless feast of new. Paris was the place to be and the only place in time. Ian came and went unpredictably. Sometimes he was just a murmur, waxing melancholy on the time he missed between when he died, 1 year to the day before Vincent was born, and now. Oh, the interesting things I missed, he ruminated one evening while Vincent was in the passionate arms of a maiden from the brothel. Oh, my God, Vincent said aloud. Are you reaching La Petite Mort? The maiden asked. Yes, Vincent. Are you reaching your climax? Ian mocked. Would you shut up? Vincent shouted. Well, if that's the way you feel, the maiden said, slapping him hard across the cheek as she stormed the door. Then find yourself another romp. Oh, well, Ian said, as they were back on the streets of Pigalle, heading toward Lepic. She wasn't so good anyway? No, I suppose not, Vincent said. And their laughter echoed down the cobbled streets. Well, Vincent's did anyway.